We're rewinding to 1988. Two rising stars sit down to face each other across the board. Vasyl Ivanchuk with the white pieces and Vishwanathan Anand with black here. Now, back in the day, Vishy was just an absolute whirlwind. Of course, he went on to achieve such incredible things, but what really characterised his ascendance in the chess world was this ability to just play so quickly, so ferociously attacking, and he had this ability to just blow opponents off the board if they weren't wary. And this game is a great example of that. So Chucky kicks off here with pawn to e4. We had e5 from Anand, knight to f3, and now he plays the Petrov. Now, it's got this reputation for being kind of solid, a bit boring, but it can get very aggressive, as we'll see in this game. So the pawn was taken on e5. Black now plays the standard move, kicking that knight back, then picking up the pawn on e4 here. And now here we had d4, the classical way to play against this. Anand goes d5, taking some central space. Bishop to d3 played. And now bishop e7 just develops here. White doesn't want to start taking this knight. After the pawn recaptures, you kick the knight around. It's not a good structure for white. So castle's now played. Knight to c6 from Vishy. There are many different setups here. It's already very tactical. You know, you block in the c pawn, but you're looking at knight b4 stuff. And after rook to e1, the tactical theme already continues here because that piece is attacked twice, but black doesn't defend it with bishop to f5. Instead, bishop g4 is played. Now, what happens if you take that knight? Well, after pawn recaptures, rook takes here. You can take on f3, queen takes back, and you recapture the pawn on d4. Black's actually got a decent game here, more than equalised. So that's why we didn't have this one captured on e4 here. Instead, Chucky went c3, bolstering his centre. And now Anand goes pawn to f5, one of the most aggressive continuations here. You're preparing to castle, chuck that pawn down the board. But of course you are creating weaknesses around your king, so that could be dangerous long term. And Chucky already goes queen to b3 now, trying to look at these light squares here, looking down in this direction, and more importantly, looking at this unprotected pawn. But Anand just goes queen to d6, a multi-purpose move. So he covers this knight. Now if white takes here, rook to b8, this is actually a good game for black. You can chop on f3, for example. And the other purpose of the queen d6 move, this line highlights it, is that then the queen can swing to g6, check the king, not good for white. So white didn't capture on b7 here. Now you have to do something about this knight here. It's about to get captured. You can develop and protect it, but Chucky goes for the more ambitious move here. He drops this one back, preparing to then go pawn f3, forking these two pieces, but Vishy actually just ignores that threat. He castles queenside here, inviting f3, which Chucky plays, and then he just goes bishop to h4, leaving his pieces on prise, attacking this unprotected rook on e1, and that's why you don't have time to actually take either one of these, because then you lose your rook. Better game for white, and you can't go pawn g3 here, or then black can actually crash through like this. Say pawn recaptures, the queen comes in. This is actually leading to mate. So the rook actually had to move here. It came across to f1, and now here when you run this with the engine, it wants to go say bishop to h5, drop one back, or bring a rook to the f-file, leave this piece on prise, but continue the attacking ideas in a different manner. But Vishy goes for something completely different. It's not necessarily best, but it's very aggressive, not easy for white to refute. So bishop to h3 was played here, just trying to rip apart the king. Now you can't take that pawn, or once again there's this whole idea of swinging the queen into the attack. This is check after the king moves. Then you check here, rook recaptures, bishop takes, and this is actually threatening mate. There's big problems on the white back rank. This is one of the key themes. These pieces are stuck at home, and if you defend with queen d1, well then there's this slow motion threat of rook to e1 here, e8 rather, and you're hitting e1, and white just can't stop that threat. It's unstoppable, completely lost. So that's why this bishop wasn't captured on h3, opening up the g file. Instead, Chucky plays a great move here, queen to c2, he nudges back, covers his second rank here, so that after queen to g6, threatening checkmate, then he can move the knight away, he now covers the mate, and he's preparing to also develop these pieces here on the queen side. What does Vishy do? Well, he doesn't retreat any pieces, he leaves the knight on prise, the bishop on prise, he just brings more firepower into the attack. Still, Chucky doesn't dare capture that knight on e4, he just wants to develop. Good move. And now the best move for Vishy here was actually pawn to f4, because you stop the bishop from developing to that square. After rook to e8, which is what Vishy played, bringing more firepower into the attack, well, now this bishop could have developed here. You connect the rooks, you sort out the back rank issues, and it's not so easy for black to continue this attack. You know, the computer wants bishop to g5 here, but you're kind of going in the wrong direction. White's actually winning this one. But instead of bishop f4, Chucky goes king to h1 here, stepping out of those g-file pins, but now Vishy has a winning combination, which he finds in this position here. Can you see this sequence? So he plays knight to f2 check. Now that one was captured by the rook, and here's the trick. You don't check down here immediately, or white can block with the rook and is actually winning this position. But instead of doing that one, you take on g2 with check here. Now here Chucky resigned, because if he recaptures with the rook, well, now you check on the back rank. And if you block with the bishop, we do this, then the rook can block. This is leading to mate. And if instead of capturing with that rook, you actually try and move the king here onto the g-file, well, once again we can check. Yes, you can block, we take here, rook recaptures, and now you don't even take that one, you just go bishop f3 here, unleashing the queen once again. The king has no squares here, and so all white can do is actually chuck pieces in the way. This is checkmate. So an absolute crush from Vishy. If you want to see another exceptional game from him, then click here. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon.